Welcome to the Fearless Revolution. Courage is important, but taking fearful action is not a sustainable long-term strategy. If you want to take back control of your life and stop believing the lies that are holding you back, then you're in the right place. Join Sandy Gledhill, your fearless leader coach, as she reveals the secrets to living and leading fearlessly. Now, let's join the Fearless Revolution.
I'm really excited for today's episode. I know I say that a lot, and I always mean it, but this time, legit. I have a really good friend with me who has impacted my life at a very deep level. You guys know I've talked about, I talk about identity work like it's my job, but I have also shared with you that the life skill of treasure hunting your own God-given identity is something that grows as time passes. Like I get better at discovering new aspects of my true identity. And you know my value for coaching. And you also know I'm super picky about coaches that speak into my life. When I tell you that somebody coaches me, that person has been vetted for my specific needs, and I feel like they are heaven sent and exactly who I'm supposed to be coaching with or mentored by. Today, I have one of those people as a guest on the Fearless Revolution. His name is Dubb Alexander. He's a wildly interesting guy. We are barely going to scratch the surface of all the interesting things about him. I will just tease you with the fact that he was raised in an Amish cult. So he's got that going for him. But now, like me, he is a faith-based guy. He presses into that, but he does dramatic and amazing things like advising presidents and heads of state all over the world. He works with the UN and runs an amazing nonprofit. And he has helped me more in recent years to dig further into my own identity than anybody else in my world. So that's a longer introduction than I usually do, but I really want you to hear my heart on how excited I am to have him on the show today. So please welcome Dubb Alexander. Hey, Dubb, how you doing?
What's up, man? That was quite the intro. Thank you so much. And Sandy, you're amazing. And I've been looking forward to this chat here for a week now. And I'm ready to just have some good times digging into the possibilities that come with potential and how much fun life can be. I love that word that you used about treasure hunt. And, when we're able to look at life as that, like what is there that is within me to discover, and what is there around me that what is within me was made to impact, like life just becomes so much more fun, and it helps shift you out of that. A lot of people are stuck in survival mode. And then there's this whole kind of, if I can just die with dignity mode, and both of those make me want to puke on my shoes, man. I'm like, hey, we've got some fantastic opportunities in front of us in this world. We've got some dynamic potential within us. And so let's make life count. And you're one of those people. In fact, you're one of those people that is setting up other people to do that as well as yourself. And so multiplication is a big deal. So I'm just excited about what you're doing. I'm honored to be on your podcast, and let's go.
Wow. Thanks so much. See what I mean, guys? He's been on 30 seconds. He's already dropped 14 truth bombs and shot a fire missile at you. So yeah, that is just doing life with my friend Dubb. Even before we launch into the podcast, I usually do this at the end, but I want to do this up front because Dubb is one of those people you're going to hear and be like, I got to know more about who he is and what he does. So right up front, where can they find you? What are the few different things you do? I know some are faith-based, and then I think you do quite several faith-based groups. And then also, where can they find you in terms of your nonprofit and things like that? Give us some links.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yes. So I do a lot of work in government, obviously, as you've already referenced, and where I try to make myself available to the general public is through kingdomstatesman.com. You're able to access my identity consultations there. I also have a school of Kingdom. If you want to look that up on your iPhone or your Android, on both platforms in the App Store, you're able to download School of Kingdom. It comes preloaded with an Intro to Kingdom course. And so I'd love for everybody to download that and access that resource. And so appreciate that.
Yeah. So in terms of identity work, we talk about it a lot on the Fearless Revolution, because fearlessness begins and ends with really understanding who we are, who God created us to be. And I talk about identity as being so multifaceted, multidimensional, rich and deep and layered. And I think as humans, we want things figure outable. So we we like make everything the lowest common denominator and try to label people and categorize people. And I actually really encourage my clients, my audience, to dig into the mess a little bit. I think it's fun to get, all the different things, even sometimes those things that seem dichotomous. And as I've mentioned before on the show, hands down, the best identity coaching that I myself have received was from Dubb. It is faith-based, but even if you're not bent toward the faith-based stuff, I highly recommend you do it, because the reality is you are created, right? That ultimate divine intelligence, that thing that we know as God, we know him as a loving God. And just like parents that have a new baby, God has you as his child, and he wants you to know who you are. And Dubb is supernaturally gifted to help you figure that out. So talk a little bit about your identity coaching. How'd you get into that? What do you see the benefits are for people that have gone through it?
Yeah. So, man, I love so much of what you pointed to in that. And it's so important. I feel like there's 4 questions that if you can have clarity and language surrounding these 4 questions, then you are going to gain some ridiculous traction and acceleration in your life. And those 4 questions would have to do with origin, identity, purpose, and destiny. Where did you come from? Who are you? What do you bring to the table? And what table are you supposed to be sitting at? And so that's really what I go after in the identity consults. I loved what you said about even when things seem to have opposed you, that's a clue to a power, an authority, a key that you carry. There was a South African influencer named Kim Clement that would always say, your place of pain becomes your place of reign. And I found that to be so true, that whatever has come into your life, even without your permission, that has struck against you, it's actually providing an opportunity for you to mature through that into a place of health. And that healthy place, once you've done the work to process through that wound, actually comes with a new level of authority in that arena that allows you to not only overcome things like that in the future at a higher level, but also unlock the ability in others to overcome those things. And so really, when I look at an individual and I'm coaching them, it's no different than how I look at a nation. And so I always say, when I see a person, I see a nation. When I see a nation, I see a person, because they're the same. And so if I'm working with the leader of a nation, I'm going to look for 3 things. Number 1, I'm going to look for what are the natural resources that are available in this nation, right? What is a nation comprised of? A nation is comprised of a territory, a citizenry, and a government. And so what are the natural resources that reside in any of those 3 components that can help take that nation to the next level if exercised correctly? Number 2, I'm going to be looking for what are the supernatural passions of the people group or the citizenry that live in that region. And these are expressed through their culture. So what does their music sound like that's indigenous to those people? What does their art look like? What famous people have come from that country, and what did they excel in? All of these are clues to what you and I would say is the intelligent design, not only of individuals, but of nations. Nations have been designed as well as individuals. And then lastly, so you have natural resources, supernatural passions, and lastly, what we began this conversation with, the unnatural attacks. What have come against that nation? Because that points towards a place where they can overcome. And overcomers are celebrated. If you overcome something, now all of a sudden, people will lend you not only attention, but they will lend you authority in their lives because they see that you have been victorious in an area. And so if I'm sitting with a government leader, we're going to go through their nation. Okay, what are the natural resources that you have available? What are the supernatural passions expressed in the culture of your people? And what are the unnatural attacks that have come against your nation? Because all of these are pointing towards the identity and the purpose of your nation. And it's the exact same with an individual. And so I'll ask them to assemble a list of their natural resources. And so, for instance, you, Sandy, you have a lot of wisdom. You have a lot of courage, which I now know is the higher truth of fearlessness at work in your life. You have boldness, you have integrity, you are a clear communicator. All of these things are natural resources that you carry. And so, and then I asked you, what are your supernatural passions? Because everything that you are drawn to in the physical realms and dimensions naturally, you're drawn to do that in a supernatural way in multiple other dimensions, whether it's in atmospheres or in emotion or all these different things. But that's as close as you can get your hands to it on the physical, so you're drawn towards that. And then, of course, I asked you, what are the most significant emotional events that were painful, things that entered your life without permission, that struck against you? Let's make sure that you've worked through those things in a healthy way so that you're sitting in the position of victor rather than victim in that situation. And you had done that work. And so that gives you credibility and authority to bring victory to other people that are in process dealing with the same things that you have already overcome. And so I use the same template with a nation that I do with an individual. And that process is about 80% identity, shifting into about 20% of purpose. But yeah, if you're able to get clarity on those 4 questions, where did you come from? Who are you? What do you bring to the table? And what table are you supposed to be sitting at? Man, life just gets a whole lot more fun. It becomes purposeful. You'll see that doors open for you in supernatural ways to put you where you need to be with the right people at the right time to accomplish what it is that you were meant to do. But clarity and language surrounding those topics are key.
Man, I have to remember that I'm hosting a podcast because I'm so used to learning from this friend of mine that I go into like student mode and I'm looking around for something to take notes. It's like, oh, snap. I have to talk again. Did I tell you, or did I tell you that he is amazing? I've never heard anybody teach that a person is a nation is a person. But when you break it down, when Dubb breaks it down through his teaching, it makes it so much sense. And I'll tell you something Dubb said that really kind of set me free. So both of us come from fairly restrictive religious upbringings. His way worse than mine. But, I was in that sort of highly religious background. And I always loved Las Vegas. And I always felt like I had to feel a little guilty about it because, I'm a Christian and I shouldn't love Las Vegas, but I love everything about it. I love that you can walk on the street with a beer. I love, the shows. I love that the buffets used to be cheap, not so much anymore. But obviously, I see the degradation and the darkness there. I'm not blind to that. But the good things of Vegas, I've always loved. And I've always felt like I kind of had to hide that and feel a little guilty. And Dubb said to me one time, I love Las Vegas because there's no religious oppression there. And for those of us that have come out of religious oppression, to go to a place where there's none, there's like no religion, really, there's a freedom there. And that really it shifted my view of cities and nations and people. And it made me more loving, more accepting. And it caused me to see with different eyes how to extract the amazing things without allowing the negative things to become the defining factors, like the total defining factors by which I had to decide if I liked a person or a place or a city or even an activity. So thank you for that, Dubb. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about, I want to hit next how you ended up on a presidential advisory board. You told this story even recently to a group I was in and how you felt like you had been made for that position. Tell that story because it's just so great.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So this was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into my process of beginning to work with high levels of government. And so I had received a call to be on a diversity coalition for the president that was running at the time. And it was so funny because my story is super complex. You mentioned the Amish-ish cult piece. And the funny thing about that is that while that did occur, it was also while I was living in the hood of South Dallas, which is known as Oak Cliff. And so that's where I was born and raised. We were the only white family. It was really rough back then. Definitely, you hear gunshots all the time, and I mean, it was the hood. And my parents got involved with this cult down in Waco, Texas, called Heritage Homestead, which has kind of like Amishy, Mennonite-y. Like, if you could get all the most religious people together and they could just have a baby, like that's what this cult was like. And so we would drive down there on the weekends, and like all I want to do is rap and play basketball with my friends in Oak Cliff, right? Like that's the dream. And yet on the weekends, I'm like walking behind a horse that's plowing, picking up sweet potatoes, or like throwing hay up to Jedediah in a wagon, right? Like, where did my life go wrong? What is happening? Like, this is not where I wanted to be. It's like I was living Weird Al Yankovic's Amish Paradise remake of Coolio's Gangster Paradise. And it was just super weird. But all that to say, I was used to being the token white guy in my neighborhood. And so when the Diversity Coalition calls, the issue that they had was they had formed this coalition. They had a meeting with the gentleman that would become the president just a few short months later. And they realized we don't have any white guys on the Diversity Coalition. So I get the call. I'm like, I was made for this. I've been the token white guy my whole life. Don't worry, guys. I've got this. And so, my wife and I, we packed up and flew into to New York to meet with the candidate. And but it's one of those things. You have to realize that when you are certain of your identity, when you're settled in your identity, you've come into alignment with who you are, and you've got clarity surrounding your purpose, that these moments of convergence will begin to occur at a more and more rapid rate. And you'll find where things that should not make sense in your past all of a sudden will make sense in a moment, because the intelligent designer that created you is not going to allow anything to be wasted. And so everything in your life, even the things you don't like to think about that have occurred, like there is a purpose for those. Your intelligent designer did not make those things happen to you, but the intelligent design that is outplaying in you, through you, and all around you will make sure that nothing goes to waste on your behalf. And so be looking for those things that have struck against you in the past. Look for it to come full circle and come around where you are now in a position of power and authority, and you have the ability to take that hard thing from the past and make it a great thing for others in the future.
That's so amazing. And here's what I want you to hear. I want the listeners to hear this. When you get called up, so Dubb gets called up for a U.S. presidential candidate who ultimately was elected to be on a diversity council. He's only 1 or 2 years into this journey of working at high-level government stuff. He gets called up. What's the first thing most of us would feel? We would feel unworthy, afraid. Fear would start lying to us, right? You're not good enough. This isn't for you. They don't really want you. They just need a white guy. Like all the lies of fear, right? And my audience is well aware. Fear is external. It lies to you. It only operates in your life with your permission and your cooperation. So all of these things are likely to come at you. But what did Dubb say? I was born for this. I've been like practicing for this my whole life. Like, put me in, coach. That is strong ties to his identity. So when we talk about identity, knowing who you are is one of the primary tenets of living a fearless life. He could step into this unknown with people who've been doing it longer than him, who have experience in this particular arena. There are probably people on that council that had been on many diversity councils. And here comes the ex-cult, and by the way, Dubb referenced this briefly. He's a very good rapper. He was a legit rapper, like in his day, I've heard him rap. He's very good. He is such a complex and interesting guy. I do hope you guys go follow all his stuff, because he will have you laughing constantly, as well as adding crazy value to your life. But he was able to fearlessly give a yes in a moment when a door opened and an opportunity presented itself, because he knew who he was. So I really want to hit that point. And then I would like to move into talking a little bit about what you do with the UN. I find this fascinating. So just kind of, how did you get involved, and what do you do with the UN?
Yes. So, and one quick point to your last point. I love this this phrase right here, that if you do not know the truth about you, you will believe a lie about you.
Wow.
And so,
Yes.
come on.
That's so good.
What Sandy is hitting over and over again about clarity on your identity is so necessary, so necessary. So pursue whatever avenue you have to do to get clarity and language on that. Yes, so the UN is such an interesting organization, and it's comprised of ambassadors and diplomats from nations, and then high-level NGO boards, and there's different levels of the NGOs that have different levels of status within the UN, which determines their ability to influence, to speak into matters, to have access to different numbers of ambassadors, etc. And I've currently find myself sitting on the board of a high-level UN ECOSOC NGO. And the way that happened really came through two main processes. Number one is honor. Whatever you honor in your life will be drawn to you. And so, and I'm not a big, like law of attraction guy at all, but I do know that a principle of life is that whatever you honor will show up in your life. And so make sure you're honoring the right things. And so there's a gentleman who was a global influencer, a Bahamian named Dr. Miles Monroe, who has had such a huge impact in my life. All of his books, his writings, his teachings. He really became a spiritual father to me into my journey of understanding the reality of life and how life works, principles, etc. And I've always been quick to honor him on pretty much every platform I've ever been asked to speak on. And he was on the board of an ECOSOC in the UN. And so part of the journey into finding myself in that position was simply honoring him and people that knew him taking notice of that. Secondarily, it's just, learning to start with what you have. And so as I began to get clarity on, I was made to impact a government, and more importantly, the specificity of I was made for global government. I've had little moments, flashes of high levels of favor within federal government, but the majority of favor, and when I say favor, I just mean where you hit that moment of convergence and things are just working for you. You find yourself constantly in the right place at the right time with the right people in order to accomplish what is in your heart to do. That's what I mean by that statement. And my favor is in global government. And so when I was in the process of, okay, how do I impact government with the tools that have been designed within me? I just had to say, you know what, we're going to start somewhere simple. I'm going to pick a global issue. I'm going to discover a solution, and then I'm going to make that available to people. And I'm going to set out a platform. And so I settled on the global issue of fatherlessness. I developed a solution or a strategy to combat that, which is to teach people to become aware of the fatherless that are around them, realize that that individual is most likely lacking in provision, protection, and empowerment, because those are the things a father should provide. Realize that your ability to impact their provision is limited by your personal resources. To impact their protection is limited by your proximity to the individual, but your ability to empower an individual is unlimited. And so how do we bring empowerment to the fatherless? Well, you have to choose to trust them before they deserve it. You have to choose to be intentional to encourage them. And you have to choose to champion them by lending whatever platform is available to you, whatever influence you have earned and developed on their behalf to position them correctly. So trust, encourage, champion. If you do that, you have the opportunity to impact someone who didn't have a good dad in a crazy way and position them correctly so that they can have their impact into the world. So I developed this platform, Fathers Add Value. I present the strategy, and within just a few months, I go from being asked to speak at local governmental gatherings to being asked to go to Washington, D.C., which opened the door into an international organization, which landed me at the UN in a debriefing conversation in which the opportunity and opened up for me to sit on the board of this UN NGO. And so it really had to do with honoring what is honorable in my life. And number two, starting with what I knew how to do. And so if someone had said, hey, you're supposed to be working in the UN, I wouldn't have known what to do, right? But I started with what I knew how to do. And because I was operating in convergence, I know where I come from. I know who I am. I know what table I'm supposed to be at. And I know what I bring to those tables. Because I was clear on that, it all just rolled out. And that's available for anybody.
So in his last answer, he hit exactly what we talk about with knowing identity. With this, he's venturing into the destiny zone. So he said, okay, I know who I am. Now, in our world, we talk about passion prospecting. Like I see digging into your passions is like prospecting for gold, right? Because it's the best gold in the world. And I am a treasure hunter. In my identity, I'm a treasure hunter and a mouthpiece, among other things. So I view everything through that lens. Everything is a treasure hunt for me. And when we look at Dubb's story and what he just told us, he knows who he is. He knows what is interesting to him. He knows what he feels drawn to in terms of governmental things. He also sees where he has favor or opportunities, open doors. When doors just swing wide right in front of you, that is favor. And that's, when I do identity coaching, I talk a lot about like, where are you honored? Where do you find that people just give you stuff for free? What are you doing when that happens? That's an area of favor for you. So he figures out his area of favor. And then, and this is the part I really want you to catch, he goes, well, I'm just going to pick something. I'm going to pick global government, and I'm going to pick the issue of fatherlessness, because Dubb himself is an authority on this, right? He had a weird upbringing, to say the least, and father issues. So he himself has been wildly intentional and dug deep on fathering well. And he has this adorable daughter named Cinda. He and his wife, Beth, they're such a fun family. I just like, Beth is beautiful. And like you see her, and her hair will be like purple one day and they'll be blonde the next and red the next. And I'm always like, ooh, let's go see what Beth's hair looks like. And they're in like the performing arts, and she's also a teacher. They're just a super fun, interesting family. But he chose, not everything is this big cosmic meteor that's hitting your life with revelation. I talk about revelatory moments, like Oprah used to call them aha moments. And those happen, but they happen in between the times where you are just figuring it out. You're making stuff up. You are just making choices and decisions. Pick something. Like, guess at your destiny. Nobody's going to be a better guesser about your destiny than you. And in lieu of having a coach, if you're not there yet, then just start guessing and start trying things and see what works. See where the favor starts to draw you. So he like picks global government. He picks the issue of fatherlessness. And what happens? Boom, door after door after door starts to open to him. I just think that's fabulous, because I love talking to fearless leaders about how your fearlessness grows naturally, how you can shut down the lies of fear when you know who you are and you know why you are. So that destiny and identity pieces, those are just, man, they are so, so important.
Come on, well said.
So yeah, I feel like we're going to church here today. We're getting some things figured out. I love it. As you look back at your life, do you see an area where the lies of fear held you back? We talk a lot about how fear wants to, it pretends it wants to keep you safe. Fear tells you it's keeping you safe, but that's not the job of fear. That's the job of wisdom. So fear keeps us living smaller lives than our big destinies demand. Is there an area or a time in your life where you can look back and go, I was listening to the lies of fear. Maybe even I grafted that language in as my own, and it kept me living a smaller life than I was destined to live. But now, is there an area of overcoming fear that you can point to in your life?
Wow. Probably several. I think the one that I'd like to talk about today would have to do with overcoming the fear of not belonging in a room. And so, when things really began to take off for me in the government space, and I began to get invitations in to sit with presidents and prime ministers, heads of state of different, ministers of different levels in different governments, when that first began to happen, I had like a little bit of this, like, oh man, like I'm about to go meet this president. Like, what am I bringing to the table, right? Like what qualifies me to be in that room, because there was a lot of preparation that I didn't realize was preparation for many years. But then when I stepped into the process and hit that moment of convergence and favor began to operate on my behalf, it really accelerated super quickly. And so it was in no time at all before I was going to go meet with my first president, and I remember sitting in the foyer of that office like, man, I'm about to sit with a president of a nation, and it's like, it's crazy how this happened, and it was so fast, and do I belong in that room? What am I going to say? And like, it was like everything began to get super loud and super quiet at the same time, right? It was super loud as far as all the insecurities and the worry of deficiency, and it was super quiet when it came to my core competencies of wisdom, of joy, of inspiration, And so I had to reset and reframe. I had to bring myself, I call it back to zero. I've got to get back to that place of peace, back to that place of joy, and back to that place of operating from my core competencies. And I had to have a conversation with myself that reframed how it is that I was seeing the conversation that was about to take place into, hey, you know what? This guy is actually just a man like me. And my narrative, the history of my life, has unlocked some things, or I've earned some wisdom in some areas that he hasn't, simply because our experience is different. And so I had to reframe, reset into, okay, when I go in and sit with this gentleman, just because he's a president of a nation, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to impart something into his situation, into his life, that will be beneficial to him than it would be with any other individual that I've ever coached or consulted with. And so I had to reframe into my core competencies, shut down those voices of fear, right? And say, you know what? This guy is actually about to get to have 15 minutes with me.
Nice.
And it seemed like such a crazy process. And I remember it happening super quickly and super slowly all at the same time. And some people would say, well, that sounds like arrogance, when it's actually congruence. And so you can't mistake a confidence in a core competency for arrogance. You've got to own that sucker and know that no matter what table you're sitting at with any individual, you are who you are. You have earned what you have earned, and it is yours to apply that at any given moment to add value to anybody's life.
Man, that is just so good. And I'm over here, I'm laughing because it's like, I actually write in my book in several different ways, as the voices were screaming silently in my head. I get that dichotomy of everything got loud and everything got quiet. Everything moved fast and everything slowed down. Like, that is what stress and pressure will do, is that your receptors begin to receive differently. Your eyes are perceiving differently. Your ears are hearing differently. That's why on movies, when somebody gets afraid or stressed, all of a sudden they distort all the sound. Why? Because that's what happens when you go into panic mode. And here, the lies of fear always wants to keep us small, because when we're in alignment with our identity and our purpose, we're unstoppable. We're world changers.
Yes, come on.
Fear wants to be in charge all the time. Fear always lies. Fear never doesn't lie. Fear will never accidentally tell you the truth. It just doesn't work that way. Fear is a liar. Lying is like the first language of fear. And so you have to be able to say to yourself, I'm here and I have something to bring. I love Dubb's question about, what do you bring to the table? Think about that. In my book, I say, the questions, I put some identity questions in there that I walk some of my clients through. And I often hear from people, wow, those are kind of so simplistic. Yes. And how much intentional time have you taken to sit with these simple but arguably most profound questions in the universe that have to do with who am I? Why am I? We disdain the simplicity of this journey, but I think by doing that, we devalue the incredible worthiness of this journey. So I really just think I would encourage everybody, write down those questions that Dubb said and spend some time with them. But if you are ready to live beyond courage, this is our little hashtag live beyond courage. There is a place beyond courage called fearlessness. And if Dubb had activated his courage in that moment when he felt like, oh crap, now here I am. I pushed for this. I was excited for it. Now I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm going to go sit with this president and oh crap, I'm not up for this, and all the lies of fear. He could have activated his courage, forced himself to take action in the midst of his fear. That's what courage is. And we've put a high value on courage. He could have done that, and he would have walked through the door. He would have sat down, but he would not have had the peace that comes from fearlessness. So what he did is he actually stepped into fearlessness, knowing who he is, knowing why he is, knowing what he brings to the table. And in that, he could go in with clarity and language, as he's hit several times during this conversation. He could go in without the stress. Courage does not remove the stress. It moves your feet. It moves your feet. It doesn't change your headspace. It doesn't clarify your language. It doesn't bring confidence. It simply moves your feet to take action and do something you're scared to do. Fearlessness allows you to step in boldly, unapologetically, show up authentically. That is what we're after. So that was the perfect story to end on. Dubb, any parting words?
Oh, man. It's been a great conversation. I loved, I caught a new thought as you were talking just now in this last segment. The way that you phrased something helped me to see for the first time. I talk a lot about external convergence, and when the doors start opening to get you at the right place, at the right time, with the right people to accomplish what is in your heart to do. But I was realizing, wow, that's also an internal convergence piece that fearlessness allows you to step into. Courage will simply, as you were saying, help you to move into external convergence, but you won't have that internal convergence unless you are intentional about it, right? And so what do you need to do? You need to have a game plan as a fearless leader of what are the steps that I need to do to shift into fearlessness, and how quickly can I accomplish that? And so, yeah, that's just a new thought that I caught. So thanks to you. So
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for having me. This was a great combo.
I taught Dubb something. Somebody write it down. Hey, thank you so much. This has been just absolutely one of my favorite conversations that I've had. You bring so much value to every group that you speak to every person that you interact with. I appreciate you so much. And as always, I love my audience, my listeners. Thanks for tuning in. I know you've gotten value out of this. I usually say, if you've gotten any value, go hit that big purple subscribe button, but I'm not even going to say if, because I know you got value today. So please subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to leave us a review, give us a rating, all those good things. We're trying to get ourselves off the ground and get some traction, and we need you guys to accomplish that. All right. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time on The Fearless Revolution.
The Fearless Revolution has begun, and you are an important part of getting the message of fearlessness out to the world. Follow Sandy on Facebook and Instagram at The Fearless Revolution for more empowering content that will help leaders embrace the fullness of their identities, lean into their destinies, and lead fearlessly. Check out the show notes for all the links. If this podcast has impacted you, we ask that you subscribe or follow, and be sure to share with another fearless leader.